Coming up on Dr. Kiki Science Hour, it's Shark Week, so we're talking about sharks with David Shiffman from the University of Miami. That's up next on Dr. Kiki Science Hour.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Dr. Kiki's Science Hour is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Dr. Kiki Science Hour with me, Dr. Kiki Sanford, episode 107, recorded Thursday, August 4th, 2011. Shark Week Bites? This episode of Dr. Kiki's Science Hour is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or TV instantly. All streamed directly to you, saving you time, money, and hassle. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. 1. Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Kiki's Science Hour. It's episode 107, and today, I hope you're excited and ready for a great show because our 1 hour, one topic, one expert, we're going to dig in to the science of something kind of fun, kind of different, very summary, in fact. We're going to be digging into the science of... Wait, what was that? There's something in the water. Do you recognize the sound? The finned creatures. Everyone beware. That's right. We're digging into Shark Week. It is Shark Week at the Discovery Channel, and I thought it appropriate, given all the shows that they show about shark attacks and shark bites, to talk about the reality of sharks in the oceans. What is the state of shark knowledge, awareness? Where are we in our perceptions of sharks and our understanding of their ecology and their state? To do that today, I'm going to be joined by David Shiffman. He's a blogger at southernfriedscience.com and a graduate student at the University of Miami. But first, as usual, we have a few science headlines, so let's get into it. Last week, we reported that the moon might have had volcanoes at one point in its history. This week, it seems that it might have formed like a parasitic twin. That's right. At one point, the Earth had two moons. They eventually collided, allowing the larger moon to engulf the smaller moon, creating the moon that we now know and love. The researchers suggesting the idea look forward to finding support from data expected to come from NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Molecular oxygen, two oxygen atoms connected by a double bond, makes up about 20% of the air that we breathe and has been discovered for the very first time in the Orion Nebula by scientists using the Herschel Space Observatory. Oxygen is one of the most abundant elements in the universe, but molecular oxygen has only been detected once previously. The scientists think molecular oxygen is often hidden in ice crystals on dust in outer space, but it can be detected when starlight heats up the crystals, allowing the O2 to escape. At the University of Cambridge, researchers published a study in the journal Science that concludes Neanderthals were outmatched by the massive numerical supremacy of modern humans. I love that, massive numerical supremacy. At least that's what the press release says. Anyway, scientists have been puzzling as to what caused this demise of the Neanderthals 40,000 years ago after they occupied Europe for nearly 300,000 years. This study says that there were way too many invasive Homo sapiens for the Neanderthals to be able to compete. And humans, we evolved near open savannas going back nearly 6 million years, according to a study out of the University of Utah. Researchers used chemical isotopes in the soil sediments to figure out how much shade early humans might have had. Shadiness denoting wooden areas rather than savanna. If you have not very much shade, that would be more savanna. Well, it turns out that tree canopy cover was less than 40% at most of the sites that they studied. Talk about some forensic anthropology going on right there. And in case you were wondering what happens to a fetus's brain when a pregnant mom doesn't eat enough, new research suggests this research was with mice. It suggests that the baby's brain can do just fine thanks to the placenta. It seems that the placenta will sacrifice itself by breaking down its own tissues to be able to provide nutrients to the fetus. And finally, skin cells have been converted into brain cells by scientists at the Gladstone Institutes. The brain cells are fully capable of sending and receiving messages, marking an important development in regenerative medicine for neural disorders. Unfortunately, this does not yet herald the ability to offer full brain transplants. Maybe some of you were hoping for that. Sorry. Time to get on to the rest of the show for Shark Week. David Shiffman, our guest today, is a graduate student at the University of Miami studying shark conservation. He is the author of the upcoming book, Why Sharks Matter, using new environmentalism to show the economic and ecological importance of sharks, the threats they face, and how you can help. He is also an amateur shark photographer and videographer and is involved with online shark advocacy. His time is divided between educating the public about sharks, spending days at a time at sea playing with sharks, and eating horribly unhealthy foods. I guess that's what happened when you spend days at a time at sea. The food's maybe not so great. Anyway, in addition to sharks, according to his bio on Southern Fried Science, he writes about fisheries issues, marine conservation, environmental activism, politics as applied to science, and space technology. He also knows quite a bit about the scientific applications of Google Earth software. And you recently relocated to Miami for graduate school from Charleston, South Carolina. Thank you so much for joining me, and congratulations on your move.
Thanks for having me, and thanks.
You're welcome. To get started, tell me a little bit. We were talking a bit before the show, and you mentioned that you've been in love with sharks since you were little. What was it that just really cemented your interest in sharks?
Well, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, pretty far away from the ocean, but we had, like many cities, an aquarium. And when I was little, my parents got us a membership to the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium, and they could just park me down by the shark tank at the Pittsburgh Aquarium, and I would just stay there happily all day. I feel like most boys go through either a shark or a dinosaur phase, and I just never grew out of mine.
As many people tend to do, they sometimes leave those childhood interests behind, but it actually has spurred your career and your area of study. What are you planning to do? So you're just starting your graduate program for your PhD work at the University of Miami. What are your plans for while you're there?
I am going to be using a variety of cutting-edge research methods that also will involve a lot of opportunities for volunteers, if any of your listeners in the South Florida area might want to help. But we will be trying to determine what happens to coral reefs and the associated fish communities of coral reefs when the sharks that used to be there aren't there anymore. In other words, why are sharks important to coral reef communities?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I know coral reefs themselves are under it's said that they are in danger. A lot of from things such as ocean acidification and human effects.
Absolutely.
Fishing and even just damaging coral reefs. But there's also an interplay between the coral reef and sharks.
There's some preliminary evidence that suggests that sharks are important to coral reef ecosystems. Through trophic cascades, when you lose sharks, it unbalances the rest of the ecosystem. And this can lead to increases of algae on coral reefs. And when algae grows out of control because there aren't enough parrotfish or herbivores to graze it, then that can kill off many species of coral. And that's bad news for the hundreds of species of fish and other organisms that need coral reefs to survive.
Yeah. So when talking about sharks in the coral reef or just sharks in their habitat, are all sharks considered the top predators? Or are they usually at the top of that trophic cascade?
Most shark species are the apex predators of their environment, are the top of the food chain. However, there are a lot of species of sharks where that's not the case. But sharks also can be important, what's called mesopredators, which are they are involved in predation events, but they're not necessarily the top of the food chain. The Atlantic shark-nosed shark, for example, their pups, you can easily hold one with 2 fingers. They're very small, very common along the eastern coast of the United States. Those are definitely not apex predators. And the whale shark, it's somewhat debatable whether or not they are. They eat primarily plankton, but nothing eats them. So,
except for people.
Except for people, yes.
Right.
And even great white sharks are sometimes eaten by orca whales.
Right. So there's maybe a competition. It's like the gangs, the orcas versus the great whites. Do they have turf wars?
Oh, I hope so. The interactions between the two have rarely been observed, but it's led to some pretty spectacular footage.
That would be interesting. I'm sure when we think about what's going on in the oceans between these top predators or between these different large species, I'm sure there's so much that we just don't understand because it's under the water and we just don't see it.
Absolutely. It's really, really hard to study the behavior of these animals. You can observe them while scuba diving, but your presence alters their behavior. And as soon as they swim 100 feet away, you can't see them anymore.
Right.
You can catch them on a boat and attach a variety of tags that transmit their locations and things like that, and that can tell you where they go and in some cases what they do. That's still only a very limited window into the behavior of these animals.
Yeah, it would be neat if you could send a robo shark to tag along with sharks as they're underwater.
There's actually been some progress in that field, using remote operated vehicles to follow sharks, because they don't seem to influence the behavior of the animals as much as scuba divers do for whatever reason. They probably make less of a disturbance when they move.
That's interesting. So let's talk a little bit about sharks in general. You mentioned that you're working with your research is specifically looking at the interplay between sharks and coral reefs and those ecosystems. What is generally around the world the current situation for sharks?
It's not good. Due to decades of global overfishing and poor management practices in many parts of the world, many species of sharks are in big trouble. There have been reported population declines of 90% or more in many species. The IUCN Shark Specialist Group recently reported that fully 1/3 of open ocean shark species are in danger of extinction within the next few years if something isn't done to change our current behaviors.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty dramatic. The number, I was looking at the Discovery Channel website, and they were saying, I think it's like every year for a shark fin soup, humans kill somewhere around 73 million sharks.
Up to 73 million is the best scientific estimate we have. You'll get some conservation groups that say that that's probably an underestimate and it's probably closer to 100 million sharks a year. That might be true, but the best scientific estimate that we have is up to 73 million sharks a year killed for their fins. And the fins are used for shark fin soup, which is an Asian delicacy. And they provide absolutely no nutritional value or flavor of any kind to the soup. It's just texture. Shark fin soup would taste exactly the same if it didn't have shark fins in it, and it's driving many species of sharks to the brink of extinction.
Wow. In terms of the peril that the sharks are under for their fins, for this soup, I mean, I was looking at numbers. In the United States, every year, we kill 300 million turkeys. And we eat 300 million turkeys. But these are farmed animals that we raise specifically for food. 73 million it's a lot less than 300 million. But why is that number having such an impact on some species? What's really impacting their populations?
It's a lot less than 300 million, but again, as you said, those turkeys are farmed. We're not impacting the wild populations of turkeys very much. And also, most species of sharks have what's called a K-selected life history, which means it takes them a long time before they are able to reproduce. And
Right.
then at that point, they only have relatively few offspring. Some fish can spawn with millions of sperm and eggs, but sharks have, on average, maybe 10 to 15 offspring every 1 or 2 or even 3 years. So their populations just cannot support heavy fishing pressure because they don't rebound quickly from a loss.
One of my favorite things is I think it's this. Oh, is it the San Diego Zoo? There was a zoo that I went to where they had a shark exhibit with the shark egg pods. Where
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how a shark develops and and how it is different from those million egg and sperm spawns?
Sure. Sharks actually, as a group, have one of the most diverse combinations of reproductive modes of any similar group of animals. Some of them lay eggs, and these have internal fertilization. The shark mating, anyone would recognize as mating, unlike some animal behaviors where you might not be exactly sure what they're doing. Then the eggs will develop outside of the mother. Usually the mother will lay them on some sort of hard surface on the bottom. Other sharks give live birth, and still others have a weird combination where the juvenile sharks or the embryonic sharks develop in eggs, but those eggs hatch within the mother and then are born. So there's a lot of weird methods of shark reproduction, some of which that haven't been seen in any groups other than sharks.
Wow, that must be fascinating. Just I can imagine just focusing in on shark reproduction as a sole area of study. You could spend your whole life just in that.
Absolutely, and lots of people are. There's fascinating new discoveries all the time.
That's really interesting. How many species of sharks are there that we're aware of?
It changes all the time, but we're a little over 450, I believe, is the last confirmed number that I've heard. It might be higher than that now, but we are discovering a new species of shark, skate, ray, or chimera, all of which are in the group Elasmobranch.
Mm-hmm.
We're discovering a new Elasmobranch species approximately every 2 or 3 weeks, which is crazy when you think about it. A lot of these are deep sea species that we're only discovering for the first time now. A lot of times genetic evidence has shown that what we thought was one species is really two. And sometimes there are still corners of the world that are relatively poorly explored. A great new book called The Sharks and Rays of Borneo just came out, and that had several new species described in it.
Oh, that's interesting. And as we explore the oceans more and more, I'm sure that there will be more new species discovered. And as we look at certain species even more closely, like you said, we'll go, oh, these are separate. These are separate animals. These are separate species. How many types of habitats do sharks live in? You mentioned that there are deep water species, and we're used to sharks coming up close to shore, and often that's where we encounter and come into contact with sharks. But what are the different habitat ranges for different species?
Pretty much any habitat you can think of, there's at least one species of shark that lives there. The coastal waters right off our shores near the beach, or near the mangroves in Florida, where I am now, near the salt marshes of South Carolina and Florida. The bull sharks can even go into rivers, sometimes up a significant distance. Some live in the open ocean, hundreds or thousands of miles from shore. Some live in coral reefs. Some live in the deep sea. Some live beneath ice. The Greenland sharks are deep water species that live in very cold waters. Sharks can be found just about anywhere.
I think that's got to be. I mean, in terms of survival, evolutionary survival, being able to adapt to different habitats, being able to branch out into new habitats, has probably enabled their survival for so long.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's true. Sharks are very adaptable, but one thing that they've never had to deal with is being taken out of the ocean indiscriminately by the tens of millions by modern industrial fishing technology.
Right,
And
because
they have survived every mass extinction event since there have been sharks in the waters, or in our oceans. But they've never had to deal with anything like this before.
yeah, someone in the chat room was saying that the sharks have been around longer than from even before the dinosaurs. That
Long before there have been animals swimming in the oceans that we would recognize as sharks. Though none of them are the current species that we see today. Some are very similar.
Right. In terms of the all the habitats, which species are the most endangered, and what makes them so easily endangered? What kind of either human activities or their ecological habits put them at risk?
That would probably have to be the open ocean sharks, the pelagic sharks they're called. And that's because there's a lot of industrial scale fishing that goes on on the high seas, and there's almost no enforcement because it's hard to enforce laws about what boats are doing thousands of miles from shore. And in some cases, there aren't any laws. But it's hard to find a group of sharks that isn't in some sort of trouble.
For the pelagic sharks, the great white shark is the most well-known
Yes.
or at least the most easily identifiable. Is it the most easily identifiable?
Probably, though it does look very similar to other sharks in its family, such as the mako shark. If you only saw it for a second, you might think that it was a mako. But I have heard people misidentify common things all up and down the South Carolina coast as great whites all the time. But if you know what you're looking for, then great whites are very distinguishable.
And more chat room comments. A lot of people are piping in saying hammerhead. That's got to be the most easily distinguishable. Would those be considered pelagic?
There are lots of species of hammerheads. Many species of hammerheads are pelagic. But there are a lot of species of hammerheads, and in fact, those are one of those what's called cryptic species, where we thought there was just one group, and genetic evidence really showed that there were two species where we thought there was only one. That identified an entirely new species of hammerhead recently.
Oh, wow. I love the hammerhead. All sharks, I think, are really interesting, specifically for their the lateral line sensing, so the electric field sense that they have. Hammerhead sharks also are really interesting for the placement of their eyes on their head. Do sharks seem to really have these specific adaptations that make them really good at particular behaviors in particular environments?
In many cases, they do. Hammerheads, their weirdly shaped head is believed that it evolved that way because it gives greater surface area for those electrosensory cells, which are usually located on the snout. And the placement of the eyes is sort of secondary to that, but it allows these animals to see nearly directly behind them when they turn.
Oh, that's interesting. So they can, when they turn, they basically get a 300 or a 180 degree view.
They can see almost 360 degrees if they are swimming normally, because the body of a shark sort of oscillates as it swims.
Right.
And just the normal swimming motion tilts the head back far enough that with the eyes located like that, they can really see almost 360 degrees, which is crazy to think about.
That is crazy. I'd have to be chasing my tail around and around in circls. I'd really have to go in a 360 degree circle to be able to see in a similar manner. For the great white shark, why is it the best known? Is it simply the fact that it's the big predator that bites surfers, gets people at beaches, and really puts fear into people? Is that why people talk about, when people say shark, they immediately go to great white?
Probably a combination of that and the movie Jaws made great whites the most famous shark, even though they're one of the most rare. Great whites bull sharks and tiger sharks are those three species are responsible for the overwhelming majority of shark bite incidents. But most people think that sharks as a whole are something to be worried about, but really most species couldn't hurt a person if they wanted to. There does seem to be a very strong correlation between sharks that people have heard of and sharks that have in the past injured a person, because that's for the most part what the media reports on.
Right. I mean, the media's there's not much of a story in nurse sharks hung out, didn't cause any damage.
Exactly.
Where's the story in that? So to get into like the Shark Week topic a little bit, there's a lot of sensationalism there. I mean, in terms of programs that are advertised and you go to the website, it's all about shark attacks and big jaws, great white shark mouths and their teeth. And, it's all about the sensational kind of scary aspects of sharks. And I know you've watched several years, almost all the years of the Shark Weeks that have been on. Is this a persistent theme?
It's hard to say. I feel like there's been more sensationalism lately than there used to be when I was growing up. Along with spending time at the aquarium, watching Shark Week when I was little is a big part of why I became a shark scientist. I just became fascinated by these animals. And I have very mixed feelings about Shark Week, because on the one hand, it got me very interested in sharks, and it's had the same effect on a lot of people, and it puts a national attention on sharks in a way that nothing else does. But also there is this sensationalist aspect that you mentioned. Some of the specials this year are called Rogue Sharks, Killer Sharks, things like that. Shark Week specials in the past have also contributed to some very important science. The air jaws, which is one of the most famous shark specials, showed that the breaching behavior of great whites will jump completely out of the water to catch a seal. And that was the first time that behavior had ever been documented, and it turns out to be really important to the ecology of these animals. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, they had a series called Shark After Dark, which for the first time documented the nocturnal behavior of some of these animals. So they do a lot of good science, and if you watch when the episodes originally air, there's a public service announcement that airs at least once per hour talking about shark conservation issues. But a lot of the shows really promote fear instead of promoting science and conservation, which a lot of folks feel that they should be doing more of.
Right. I mean, how do public perceptions play into the science that gets done and the conservation that gets done? If everybody's afraid of sharks because of the sensationalist side of things and the fact that they're not showing a lot of the conservation type programming, or at least a good percentage, I mean, isn't that going to end up doing damage?
I hope not, but it certainly doesn't help matters. There are a lot of great organizations out there that are working to educate people about sharks, and Shark Week actually provides a platform for a lot of them. I know that my local aquarium in Charleston, South Carolina, hosted a Shark Week of their own that corresponded with this, and they had local scientists speak, and they watched documentaries, and they had a concert that raised money for shark conservation. And other aquaria have done similar things. And Shark Week itself does, to some extent, raise awareness. If you go to Discovery's website, they have a lot of great facts and ways that people can get involved. But a lot of what most people see when they watch Shark Week, if they don't go on and check the website, if they don't watch every episode, what they see is reenactments of sharks attacking people. And that definitely influences public perception.
I think there's some kind of contest as well for there was some episode that's like the top 10 shark attack reenactments ever.
Oh my.
It's like, oh, that's nice. I don't know if I need to see that.
Some of their reenactments are very well done, and they have very good production value, but some of them are not very well done.
Right. I need to take a break for a moment for a word from our sponsor. So stay with me, David, and we'll be back to the show in just a few moments for everyone out there who's watching. This episode of Dr. Kiki Science Hour is brought to you by Netflix. Netflix streams thousands of TV episodes and movies directly to you instantly, which means you save time, money, and hassle. There are several easy ways to instantly access streaming movies and TV shows with Netflix. You can watch Netflix movies and TV shows on your Mac or your PC or your iPad or even your iPhone. And yes, some Android phones as well. If you have a gaming console, like an Xbox 360, a PS3, Nintendo Wii, you can watch Netflix right on your TV using your console. If you're not a gamer, you can watch Netflix on your TV if you have Apple TV or a Roku box. These boxes are inexpensive and very easy to use. But with Netflix, you can watch movies and TV shows instantly using any of these devices. And great thing, you can begin watching a movie or a show on one device and then finish on a different one. Whichever way you choose to access Netflix, you can watch as many movies and TV shows as you want, anytime you want. So there's no being stuck to a schedule. Great thing also, you can cancel at any time. So here's the offer from Netflix. You can try Netflix today. Sign up today and you'll get 30 days for free. Make sure you go to netflix.com/twit. Use this URL when you're signing up for your free 30-day trial. It's Netflix, netflix.com/twit, TWIT. We thank Netflix for their support of Twit and Dr. Kiki Science Hour, and we hope that you enjoy watching instantly with Netflix. And back to the show, maybe you'll watch some of those Shark Week programs using Netflix. I'm sure those are available on there. I'm talking with David Shiffman from the University of Miami, and he's a shark researcher, graduate student, going after his PhD in shark conservation, studying coral reefs and sharks, the interplay, and how these organisms work together ecologically. But it's Shark Week. We were talking before we went to the break about the fact that there's a lot of sensationalism in the Discovery Channel Shark Week, in the media, what the media puts out, the stories that you hear about sharks. But that's not everything that there is to know about sharks. David, can you tell us, what are scientists most interested in learning about sharks right now? Like, what areas are really hot and scientists are really looking to discover new stuff about sharks?
There's a lot of major focuses. I just got back from a major shark scientist conference, and there are people involved in a huge variety of subfields. Some focus on genetics, again, determining if we're talking about one species or two, determining the impact of fishing on their populations, determining how ecologically important sharks are, determining how economically important sharks are. What do sharks eat? Where do sharks go? How do sharks reproduce? Things like this. There's a lot that we don't know about these animals.
I like we talked about earlier at the beginning of the show, the fact that, we can't see them. There's got to be all sorts of ecological aspects of their ecology, their behavior, different things for the 450 different species that are out there that needs to be learned. How do you actually, you mentioned earlier that you spend a lot of time on the water. There are submersibles, there's tagging sharks, but what are these advanced methods, the highly technical scientific methods that are used to study sharks and their behavior?
There are a lot. Some species it's possible to actually keep in captivity, and if you can do that, you can observe them with amazing underwater high-definition cameras, and you can see what they're doing really, really clearly. But others, it's harder to keep in captivity, but you can attach cameras to the animals themselves, and you can sort of see a shark's eye view of the ocean. In other cases, you can attach a satellite tag that reports the animal's location whenever the dorsal fin surfaces. There are others that you can insert in a shark's stomach, and they measure the pH of a shark's stomach, and through this you can determine how often they're actually digesting. There are some that can measure their 3D motion in the water, which is the same technology that's in a Wii controller that lets you tell when it's moving. There's all kinds of fancy toys that can be used, but one of the most common techniques is still just a little plastic tag with an individual identification number on it and a phone number. And fishermen and scientists tag these animals, and if someone else catches them, they report where the shark was caught, how big it was. And through this technique, the National Marine Fisheries Service Apex Predators Program has recorded tens of thousands of recaptured sharks. In some cases, we recently had one. In my old job in the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, we tagged a sandbar shark in Charleston Harbor, and they caught it in New Jersey the next year. So these animals can move really far, and the little plastic tags cost about 75 cents each.
That kind of technology is the technology that scientists really want to be using, stuff that's easy and cheap. There are other devices that enable high-tech solutions to monitoring the sharks, but they can be really expensive. I've heard of some devices being in the thousands of dollars per device.
Satellite tags are thousands of dollars each, and you don't always get them back. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes the shark is killed either due to natural causes or by a fisherman, and then the dorsal fin might not surface. If the shark is on the bottom, the tag doesn't transmit, or the tag might get wet somehow. If the waterproof casing might break. There's a lot of ways that it can go wrong, and these are very expensive devices. There's a lot of information that you just can't get any other way, and satellite tagging studies are really important, but not everyone can be doing them, primarily because of the expense and the logistics involved.
Looking at all these different methods, are there methods that people can get involved? In terms of, there's a big movement for citizen science. Is shark research an area that is enabling citizen science in any way?
Absolutely. The shark survey that I just have been working with for the last 3 years, the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources shark survey, we took about 50 members of the general public out to tag and measure sharks with us over the last couple of years, and they're going to be continuing that now that I've left. There are other shark surveys around the country that always need volunteers. Most aquaria need volunteers too, and some of them are involved in shark research. If you are living near the ocean and there's a college or university in your town, check and see if someone's working with sharks and if they need any help, as most of us do.
Do you think that great whites, being the most obvious species, aside from maybe hammerheads, but there's that fin that the Jaws movie fin and the music that we started the show out with. Is there, do people tend to gravitate towards great whites, and does that species get more study than others as a result of being so obvious?
There is a major research focus towards the charismatic shark species, the great whites, the whale sharks, animals like that. Whereas some other species are perhaps much more endangered and do not get that sort of research focus. But it's relatively easier to get grant funding for an animal like that. Of course, great whites and whale sharks need help too, and all the research focus they get is great. But there are some animals that people have never heard of that are still ecologically important and are still threatened or endangered that are not getting perhaps the research focus that they need.
Right, that they're just not getting the money or the focus to be able to. I think this happens across the entire animal kingdom, not just with sharks, but yeah, those charismatic species tend to be the ones that, you can, if you can get the research done on them, then maybe you might be able to focus also on the rest of their habitat, other species in the habitat, because as kind of a trickle down theory of scientific economics. For studying sharks and the looking at the Shark Week and the sensationalist perspective, let's counter that for a minute. I'm just wondering if you can come up with a list of things that people should know about sharks. Like if you now we're giving you a platform to speak to the public, what's the number one thing that people should know?
I actually made a YouTube video called 4 Things Everyone Needs to Know About Sharks.
Oh, great.
That was intended to be part of a curriculum. And if any educators out there are interested in this, it's free to any interested teacher or scuba instructor or even member of the public. But the 4 things that I think everyone needs to know about sharks is we really don't need to be worried about them as a threat to humans. According to the International Shark Attack File, on average in the United States every year, 650,000 Americans are killed by heart disease, 550,000 are killed by cancer, 50,000 are killed by car accidents, and on average only 1 is killed by a shark. So you have about a 1 in 3.8 million chance of being killed by a shark in your lifetime. Any human death or injury is a tragedy, but that's really not something that we need to worry about in our day-to-day lives. The other thing is that sharks are ecologically important. They, as apex predators, they help keep the food chain in check. They help keep marine environments in check. And when losses of sharks have already started to have devastating ecological and economic effects. The other is that sharks are in big trouble. As I told you earlier, many species have had reported 90% population declines or more since the 1970s. And the fourth is that there really is something that people can do to help. Anyone out there who is interested in helping sharks, you can help. There are a lot of ways that you can get involved, either simply by donating to various shark conservation charities, or volunteering your time at an aquarium or with a research program, or even just telling your friends or calling an elected representative and telling them to do more to support sharks. People really can make a difference.
Yeah, and I think if we're not always afraid about the shark attacks, which, as you've said, are statistically a slim chance for most people, you probably up your chance of being attacked by a shark if you engage in behaviors like surfing in areas where sharks tend to hunt. There are certain activities that'll increase your statistical likelihood, but for most of us, we should understand that sharks are an important part of the environment, the ocean environment, and that we can all enjoy them and appreciate them. Now, I understand as part of Shark Week that people can actually currently, right now, bid to take you on a date.
It takes place during Shark Week, but it's not affiliated with the Discovery Channel. The Shark Research Institute, which is www.sharks.org, they have organized a shark celebrity auction, and there are a variety of so-called shark celebrities, famous scientists and conservationists, that you can bid to go out and have dinner with, or in my case, the person who wins my bid also gets to come out in the field with us and tag some sharks in the Florida Keys.
Oh, that would be fun. That's really fun. So, do you know how the bidding's going? Have you been keeping track of stuff, or have you been?
I have not checked. I am in the process of moving this week, and I only just got internet today. But I'm definitely going to check. I hope that somebody's bidding on me. It'd be nice to raise some money for charity, but also I don't want to be the only one that's not bid on.
Yeah. So anybody who is in the Florida area, or if you're planning to go to the Miami area, you can bid to take David out to dinner, to go out on a boat to tag sharks in the Florida Keys. I mean, that sounds pretty cool. So if you haven't already,
somebody's got to do it.
yeah, it'd be great. And there are scientists, if you're not going to be in the Florida, Miami area, there are scientists all over the United States who are involved in shark research who are also up for bidding. I think there are 50 scientists, right, in total?
Something like that. It's an impressive list. I'm not really sure why I qualify to be on the list with some of these people, but it's a great list, and I hope people will go check it out.
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of fun. You can have a great conversation, dinner and conversation with a shark scientist, or even, as in the case of David, you could even end up on a boat looking for sharks, which could be a lot of fun. Are you looking to tag a specific species, or just all species in the area that you're going to be looking?
A lot of the research in the lab that I've joined focuses on great hammerhead sharks, tiger sharks, and bull sharks, but they do catch a variety of other species that various scientific samples are taken from.
Okay, so it could be a nice mix. I wanted to know, for everyone out there, now that we've been talking about Shark Week for the majority of this hour, people in the chat room, if you want to respond to this, do you think Shark Week helps or hurts sharks? I'd love to hear your responses. So if you want to reply right now in the chat, we can talk about it a little bit. And if you want to reply later, if you're listening to this podcast at a later date, let me know. Send me an email, Dr. Kiki at drkiki.tv. Send me an email and let me know what you think about sharks and Shark Week. I do want to hear from you. So far, people in the chat room are saying it helps in the long run, Web1833. Ulysses is saying that it helps ratings. Yep, it helps ratings. Eric W, overall, I think it helps. Web3428 says it helps. Lots out here in the Midwest would never give them a thought. And that's true. I think if you live near the water. Yeah, did you want to respond to that, Miles? I mean, sorry, Miles is in the chat room. David, sorry.
No, Shark Week does a lot of... Shark Week is, without a doubt, the greatest focus on these animals of any time in the year, both through the Discovery Channel specials themselves and the associated events that aquariums and conservation groups put on. So it definitely raises awareness. It gets people thinking about sharks, sometimes perhaps not thinking about sharks in the way that some scientists and conservationists would like, but thinking about sharks nonetheless. And as your listener said, a lot of people would just never give them a second thought otherwise if you live far from the ocean.
Right. There are a couple of other comments from the chat room. Soundwave says it depends what goes out to the public. If it's sharks are dangerous, then no. If it's sharks are in danger, then yes. And Miles did say that it helps raise awareness. Really, it's cliche, but true. And I think Kai here, he says that he just likes sharks. So... He's interested in just learning about sharks. He doesn't really know what a shark is yet. So, getting to the end of the hour here, I really thank you for you spending the time with me and talking about sharks. Is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with in terms of your interests in sharks, or anything else that about sharks and shark science that you'd like to comment on?
Well, if anyone is interested in learning more, you can ask me a question on Twitter at whysharksmatter, or you can shoot me an email at whysharksmatter@gmail.com, or follow our blog, southernfriedscience.com. I'm one of 3 writers, and it's one of the largest ocean science blogs in the world, and I hope you'll check it out and drop us a comment, ask a question. We love interacting with our readers.
Well, thank you very much. David Shiffman from the University of Miami. Once again, southernfriedscience.com is the blog. If you want to keep up with stuff with shark-related information, that's a place to start. And there are some other great bloggers at that site talking about other ocean-related ecological issues. I'm Dr. Kiki, and this has been the Dr. Kiki Science Hour. And next week, of course, we're going to be talking about more science. More science. Until then, you can follow my sciencey pursuits by searching for Dr. Kiki in the Googles. I'm on Twitter, Facebook as Dr. Kiki, and I'm just starting an about.me page, so I'll be there as well. You can subscribe to Dr. Kiki's Science Hour in iTunes. You can also subscribe to it and find past episodes through the Twit website by going to twit.tv/Kiki. And also, if you need more sciencey goodness, there's also This Week in Science, where we talk about science news once a week on Thursday evenings. That's found at twist.org. I will see you next week. Thank you very much for tuning into my Science Hour. And remember, all I ask is 1 hour a week. It's not so much, and it really makes your world a whole lot more interesting. Thanks for watching. And then the billboard. Grunt, 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 grunt. Movies on your PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or TV instantly. Kai, please be quiet. I gotta get through this one line. Just one ad, okay, babes? Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone. Same space every time. Bouncy child.